want to miss any of this. That's
I don't
that is we're starting the recording now, and just give it a couple of seconds. Okay, I'm going to give the I want to welcome everybody. Before I do, you were listening to Steve Bhaerman. I'm going to formally introduce him here in a second. I'm sorry I had to interrupt him because he was really on a roll, but I promise you we will go straight into the things that Steve was just talking about. So good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to people in other time zones in Europe and elsewhere, and welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit. Today is day 8 of the summit. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Coordinating Director for Humanities team, and I'm one of the hosts of the Living in Oneness Summit. We have an extraordinary program today that I know you'll enjoy. Please get comfortable as we begin. Over 15,000 people have registered for this summit, and registration is still climbing, so we have a large listening audience with us here today. We are broadcasting live each day with at least 2 programs, and we're talking about how we can come fully alive as part of the divine. That's the focus of this summit. I'd like to thank so much each of you, the listeners who are listening live and who are listening via audio links. As a reminder, there is a $100 discount during the summit for those who purchase upgrade packages during the summit. The upgrade packages allow you to come back again and again to listen to the wisdom that's being shared, and also to share this wisdom with friends and family. We have MP3 links, transcripts, and CDs that are available not only for the 30-plus leaders that are part of this year's program, but also the leaders that were part of last year's program that are included in the Platinum upgrade. And last year, of course, we had Panache Desai, Ken Wilber, Irvin Laszlo, Joan Borisenko, and others that were part of that program. Now, I'd like to invite you to put your name, city, and country in the question window on Instant Teleseminar. Also, please share your inspirations that you have from the Living in Oneness Summit, and questions that you'd like to get to Steve Bhaerman. I promise we'll get to at least a few of your questions during the hour, and thank you. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our special guest. You're going to love him. I promise that you're going to gather lots of insights and wisdom, and you'll also laugh a lot. Steve Bhaerman is an internationally known author, humorist, and workshop leader. For more than 25 years, he has written and performed as Swami Beyondananda, the cosmic comic. Swami's comedy has been described both as comedy disguised as wisdom and wisdom disguised as comedy. Noted author Marianne Williamson has called him the Mark Twain of our generation. Since 2005, Steve has written a political blog with a spiritual perspective, Notes from the Trail. His latest book was written with cellular biologist Bruce Lipton, who's going to be on tomorrow's program, incidentally, PhD. The book is called Spontaneous Evolution, Our Positive Future, and a Way to Get There from Here. Steve is also involved in many activist causes, including a project to heal our water, air, and land that was co-created with Humanities team. Steve is a special friend of Humanities team. And Steve Bhaerman, welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for doing this, and I'm glad that we have so many people tuning into this. We hope to hit our tuning fork and come up with some really resonant ideas that people will take out and share with others.
All right, and Steve, we'll be sure to circle back into some of the historical perspective, the evolutionary perspective that you were sharing just as we were starting the program. But, you know, I thought a good place to begin was that with your unique mission, you're just such a great person and you have such a great heart, but you also have this unique mission to promote awakening and laughter, awakening to the evolutionary understanding that we're all cells in this new superorganism called humanity, and laughing compassionately. And can you, maybe just take us back in time to when you had the calling to create Swami Beyondananda and to come and to introduce humor and awakening as 2 devices together?
Well, first of all, to go back to the beginning, I was the class comedian when I was a kid. I've always loved humor. I've always related to it. It's been kind of a language that I understood from the get-go. And, and the way you know if you're a child and that you're chosen for this archetype it's the first time you're in the lunchroom and you make another kid laugh so hard that milk comes out of their nose. So that's kind of the sign from God that you're chosen for this. So I was that kid, and I tried to get serious in many ways. I ended up as a teacher. I started an alternative high school in Washington, D.C., wrote a book about that. I was teaching at Wayne State University in Detroit, and a funny thing happened. And again, often when funny things happen in our lives, they ain't that funny. There could be a disruption. Disruption was I got laid off from a job that I loved because they had to place their tenured people. And the only job I could take at that point was working for the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan, doing tree work. I was taking down trees that had Dutch elm disease. And my wonderful Jewish mother, bless her, this is true. She was afraid that I would catch Dutch elm disease. And I said, Mom, people don't get Dutch elm disease. Dogs get it. She goes, dogs get it? What happens to dogs? Because she was concerned with Buster. I said, well, they lose their bark. So anyway, we had this, I was working at this tree work job, and a new guy shows up who is a brilliant psychologist disguised as a truck driver, and he makes the suggestion that we start a humorous newspaper for the guys at the shop, and that's what transformed my life. I began to notice the power that laughter had to awaken us to new ideas, to shine the light of truth onto things that we couldn't talk about otherwise. And that's when I began to realize that I had this gift. And so it was probably about 25 years ago, a little bit more, that the name Swami Beyondananda flew into my head. And I like to say I was struck by enlightening during a brainstorm. And this character became the vehicle for my beginning to work with spirituality and humor. And in a certain regard, the character helped define my position on humor, which was to use it to bring people together, to create our shared heart, to heal separation, to offer creativity, and to promote awakening. So fast forward to about 9 years ago, I met Bruce Lipton. We became friends, and we decided to cook this book called Spontaneous Evolution. And one of the key ideas in this book is that just as surely as we have a thriving community of 50 trillion cells underneath our skin, and those cells are connected, they get along, individual cells thrive, and the whole system thrives. The next phase of human evolution is recognizing that we are all cells in a superorganism called humanity. And in making the transition, in the gap between what my friend Charles Eisenstein calls the beautiful world our heart knows is possible, and the world that we're in right now, which every area of life seems to be upside down, from the planetary ecosystem to the human ecosystem. Humor is a way of addressing that gap. It's a way of pointing out the discrepancies between what's so and what could be. And laughing compassionately reminds us of what sanity looks like, even when our institutions seem to be insane. In addition, laughter releases endorphins and other chemicals that lift us over the line. So truly, levity really does allow us to rise above the gravity. Laughter causes breathing, and as you know, breathing is the key to long life, because when we breathe in, we inspire. When we don't, we expire. And laughing brings more oxygen to the brain, meaning we have more resources. We're not stuck in fight or flight. We're expanded to creative possibility, and that's the state of where we really need to be right now in order to create this oneness, this awakening, and the world that our hearts know is possible.
Mm-hmm. Amen. And it is happening. As we know, we were talking before the call about not only your program, but the one with Patricia Cota-Robles tomorrow morning, and then Bruce Lipton right after that. And there is a lot of channeled material coming through now that speaks to this this collective, this personal and collective transformation that's happening. And that Patricia Cota-Robles, of course, writes about this extensively, but the Hathors, Peggy Black and the team, Heaven Letters, there's so many devices that are coming through that are speaking to the work of the heavenly realm that's helping us personally and us collectively to transform. I want to share, Mary from London in the UK has come in with a comment. Good to be with you, and want to invite you all to put your name, city, country in the question window on Instant Teleseminar, and if you have things for Steve, go ahead and put them in the window as well. Steve, let's go back to some of the things that you were sharing as we were just beginning the program. You were sharing the evolutionary perspective, and a lot of times we do compare this awakening to today's ultimate reality, which is that we're all one, to the one 500 years ago, when it was only 500 years ago, after all, that we thought that the planet was flat and that we were in the middle of the universe. And then, of course, we came to find out that wasn't the case at all. The Earth was round, and we were on the edge of the universe, not in the middle. You were talking about some of that historical context. Did you want to
I'll say something.
There, Steve?
Sure. I'll say something very briefly for people before we began the recording. I was talking about when Copernicus proved mathematically that the Earth revolves around the sun. 100 years after that proof, Galileo was still in prison because he asserted the same thing. So it took a while for the conventional reality to get in line with real reality. So it's been more than 100 years since Albert Einstein, his theory of relativity, really indicated that everything is connected. And yet we are still living in a Newtonian system. We're living in a Newtonian political system of actions and reactions, a Newtonian economic system, a Newtonian psychology and educational system. And so part of the mission of this awakening right now and the work that Humanities Team is doing and some of what I'm doing with the evolutionary uprising is to really help people make this new reality what we would call Humanity 3.0, the upgrade, the software upgrade, because as we're coming to realize, we imagine that we humans were hardwired this way and that way, and really it's a software upgrade that's required. I want to insert this one thing. When Bruce and I were doing our research on spontaneous evolution, we came across this article that indicated that there is actually a gene for violence, that if you have this gene, then you will have more of a tendency toward violence. Well, guess how the violence gene is activated? It's activated through violence. So if somebody does violence to you and you have this gene, it activates the gene. So can we say it's hereditary? Can we say it's environmental? Or can we say that it's a dance between the two? And until now, we've tended to focus on the hereditary, on the things that we largely can't change. And as we're seeing, much of human behavior, much of human perception can be changed through updating the software. So what this oneness movement and Humanities Team and so on are doing is essentially recalibrating our human experience to be able to encompass a more real reality that science has essentially proven, and we're still in the process of catching up with.
Oh, right. Awesome. A software update, and I've heard it referred to this way also, recalibrating of the human experience. So we're just starting this discussion with Steve Bhaerman, Swami Beyondananda, and we'll certainly go deeper into this, into what Steve is opening up here now. I want to share, we do have comments coming in from listeners. Thank you so much. Joan in Portland, Oregon shares, I love humor. If I didn't have humor in my life, I would have collapsed many years ago. Thank you, Swami, for bringing levity to the spiritual table. There are other comments here as well. I won't get to them right this second, but we'll bring them in.
Well,
shortly.
if you're going to collapse, we should all collapse in laughter. That is the only way to collapse. Let's all collapse together. What is the sound of one humanity collapsing?
That's right. Joan, in Portland, you speak for all of us. It's funny, Bill Urey, also William Urey, was with us on Thursday last week. He was in the second day's program. He started the Abraham Path Initiative, and he was bringing through the same perspective, that humor is so important in his home. He's got a very loving home, lives in oneness, talks a lot about the Abraham of the Bible, 4,000 years ago, who was the father of monotheistic religion, and shared how important humor is in his own home. So you're appreciated.
And he is a great teacher. His book, Getting to Yes, was greatly influenced with me, and in fact, it helped the Swami develop his Just Say No to Negativity program. So anyway.
Absolutely. Just say no to negativity, and that's right. And his book, Getting to Yes, helped me tremendously. I was sharing that during his program when I was an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. I didn't know Bill, but I found the book and read it, and it was incredibly valuable to me. And his Abraham Path Initiative is incredible. But let me read one other comment, and then let's go into this whole aspect of recalibrating our human experience. That's certainly an exciting topic, and I know that's what your work is about, Steve. Let's see, this coming in from, let me read this one in, this is from Monica in the middle of Germany. She says, I am enjoying all of your sharing so freely and joyously. So that's from Monica in Germany. So thank you, Monica. We'll share other comments during the program. Steve, what as we talk about recalibrating our human experience, this whole aspect of software that's being updated on the planet, and just connecting it with your work, because you, of course, go out with your wife, you travel the country, you're in New Thought churches and other locations as well. You do retreats and programs, and you're sharing about this whole recalibrating process, things that we can do and are doing. Do you want to go a little deeper into that?
Yeah. I think that right now, Bruce and I, in Spontaneous Evolution, we developed what we call the 3-step program, because who has time for 12 steps? So the 3 steps basically are evolutionary awareness, evolutionary intention, and evolutionary practice. And each of these are ways of making this new reality more real. So let's start with awareness. Simply having the awareness that science has shown many, many ways that we are all connected, that we're all in this together, that cooperation works better than competition. Having that awareness is something that when you wake up in the morning, you realize that the world that we're in now is fundamentally different than the world we were born into, that the reality we were born into, simply because of the collective perception. So simply by changing your perception and awareness of something, you have a gateway to new possibilities. And then there's evolutionary intention, meaning we have the choice every day and every moment, whether, as that story goes, whether we feed the wolf of peace and love, or we feed the wolf of fear and anger. We have a choice. We can move to expand our awareness to we're all in this together, or we can fall back to the default system of it's me or you. So recognizing that we have that choice, noticing how we make those choices, bringing the unconscious to consciousness, very powerful. And then finally, and equally important, is evolutionary practice. What is it that we practice every day that reinforces the idea that we're cells in the body of one organism? What is it that we do every day that reinforces the notion that we are all part of the same oneness, and yet, as individuals, as the Swami would say, each of us is totally unique, just like everybody else. And as we're looking at some of the other things that Bruce and I uncovered about evolution, is that every phase of evolution involves two things: expanded awareness and expanded connection. And so as we move into this notion, as we become comfortable in and safe in recognizing that we are all connected with one another, and that by working together, we can really build toward what we desire. We can isolate the sociopathogens out there by not feeding them, just simply by having that connected and collective awareness. We can begin to ask, what do I do every day, and how am I living into this new reality? How can I adjust my work? How can I use my gifts, my talents, my heart's desire to help us live into this new connected reality? What can I support with my attention, with my money, with my time, with with everything that I have that builds forward this new world? And it's not a matter of fighting against anything. It's simply withdrawing your energy from. The great metaphor that Bruce and I use in our book, and again, this is a very common metaphor these days, is the transformation of the caterpillar into the butterfly. And we seem to be in that larval stage. We seem to be in that chrysalis right now, in that we are seeing the caterpillar, the too big to not fail system, crumbling under its own weight, under its own unworkability. And meanwhile, these new, what actually is called imaginal cells, the new cells of the new butterfly organism, are coming together. They're connecting. They're coalescing. And in a call like this, and bringing 15,000 people together, in doing the work that you're doing, work that we're doing together, essentially what we're doing is we're weaving together this web of mass construction and possibility, so that as people meet and connect, they begin to recognize how they can support one another in building this world we all know is possible.
Absolutely. Gosh, of course, I couldn't agree more, Steve. It's another message that's come through during the summit, that the metaphysical, or the magic is a key dimension, but doing the work and really living in this world of ultimate reality as if it's connected, because it is connected. Living as one, sharing, just as you said, sharing our money, our time, our attention, our resources from this place of connection. That's how we can step into this collective awakening and awaken the media and governance and all of the spheres of life, education, mainstream churches, to this aspect of connection and making the earth one that we really enjoy living in, one that we want to leave to our kids. And of course, in today's world, if you ask parents, do they want to leave the world as it is now to their kids, the answer is usually no. And it's interesting that the simple thing that we can do to create a world that we do want to leave to our kids is just to live in it as ultimate reality, as one, where we go through this, the transformation process you described, caterpillar to butterfly, where we see that in truth, our self is not our body, it's the world around us. We're a cell in the body of the divine, of God, of earth, and therefore, of course, where that's true, if we're going to be a healthy cell, then we put our attention to creating a better planet, a better community, a better neighborhood. So I love it. That's really getting into the tangible and very valuable. I want to bring in a comment from Jean in Henderson, Nevada. She says, I have followed the shift movement and all of its various diverse factions since it first began, and I'm continually amazed at the force of its influence across the world. It is becoming very visible. So listeners piping in here, too, with this aspect that, we are transforming personally and collectively. One of the things you shared in your book, Steve, with Bruce, is that you share that that we can become stem cells supporting the health and growth of our world. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, stem cells supporting the health and growth of our world?
Well, the idea of stem cells, what I love about the stem cell concept is that a stem cell can become anything. It's kind of an unfulfilled cell that expresses, in a way, infinite possibility and potential. And so stem cells they become what is required. If blood cells are required, they become blood cells. If skin cells are required, they become skin cells. They're undifferentiated at the outset. And so I like to think that the so-called, the human potential that we have, what Swami would call humanifest destiny, is that we now have the power to be all that we can be, to fully develop as individuals. And this may seem paradoxical, but the more connected we are, because evolution involves increased awareness and increased connectivity, the more connected we are, the more access we have to collective awareness, wisdom, knowledge, and information. And we have more potential now. I've just been listening to some talks about how the economy has changed from a commodity economy to a service economy, and now it's an experience economy, that people pay for experiences. And so a lot of the work, when people say, where are the jobs going to come from? The concept of jobs in a certain regard is obsolete, because we have greater potentials than that. And in this world that we're growing into, we have, as stem cells, we can match our gifts to the needs of the community and be fully fulfilled, fulfillment, the Swami calls it, fully fulfilled as individuals, fully expressed. And so we are one individual in the context of one organism, and this evolves us from this illusion of separation where we have to look outside of ourselves to be saved, et cetera, to using our inner resources more resourcefully and evolving from children of God to adults of good. And that's how we develop our individual genius in the context of a larger community and develop greater freedom to really, really be who we are and to manifest our total uniqueness from stem cell to a one-of-a-kind individual.
I love that. And children of God to adults of good. Gosh, isn't that the invitation, huh, for us all? That's one for the refrigerator, huh, Steve?
That's one for the refrigerator. Yes, exactly. Well, Swami does have refrigerator magnets that he, as a matter of fact. So that's very good, very true. We got to put that one on the magnet.
Steve, tell me about your own oneness experience. In some ways, you started by taking us back to when you were a school kid, and humor came naturally to you, and then you started programs and things. A newspaper, I think you said, was the first thing that you started. But your own oneness experience, somewhere back when you were very young, you read something, or maybe your parents raised you with this awareness of oneness, that there's this one presence and it's sacred. And what was that? What were those early experiences like for you? How did you decide?
Well, as many kids who grew up in post World War II America, the 50s and the 60s, much of what there's a wonderful saying, and I don't really remember who said it. The difference between spirituality and religion. Spirituality is our connection with the divine. Religion is crowd control. And so I grew up in a very non-religious Jewish household where we were we believed in ethics and treating people well and so on. And I became turned off to the actual religion because it wasn't really alive and vital to me. And I remember I had an experience when I was 12 years old. I was having bar mitzvah lessons, and I loved it. I loved learning Hebrew, and I was really having a great time with it until one day the teacher in this class said that we should only associate with our own kind of people. I lived in a housing project. We had black friends, we had Italian friends, we had, all kinds of kids there, and raised my hand. I was always outspoken, and I said, that's not what I learned in my family. And I could see that it stopped her, and she was looking to backtrack, and I just simply switched the off button. I said, this is not for me. So, as a young adult, I became involved with various forms of yoga and meditation and so on, and I'm in my early 20s, and I go to, this is, of course, the early 70s and so on, and I go to a bar mitzvah, and let's say I go in an altered state, and I had an epiphany, which I think it was an epiphany in this altered state, and I hear the Shema Yisrael, which is the fundamental human prayer, Hebrew prayer. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And I listened to it. I went, oh, my God, is that what they've been saying all along? Why didn't I know that? But in this altered state with expanded consciousness, I could really recognize the spirit behind this prayer that, at least in my little, conservative congregation, it was uttered without really deep understanding and appreciation of what it means that we're all one. So that was my first, I would say, getting struck by enlightening and recognizing what's probably a fundamental truth behind every religion that tends to get distorted when religion becomes crowd control.
Yes, there's a beautiful book out called Oneness. Oneness Expressed by All Religions. I don't actually have the book right in front of me, but it pulls quotes out of the New and Old Testament, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, and of course, that was one of the things that I did when I was awakening in the 90s. Is I read Conversations with God, and it's very clear you can't get lost in the messages of Conversations with God, written by Neil Donald Walsh, of course. But that caused me to go out then and start researching sacred texts. I started with the Old and New Testament, and then other religions. What do they say about oneness? And it's extraordinary that, of course, the mystical traditions of all the great religions back to the beginning of time said that we are all one. There's one presence. It's God. It's the divine. We're all cells in the body of the divine. And then, of course, as you've mentioned several times during the program, science has come in. Of course, great scientists like Einstein, but also over 81 years ago, the person that won the Nobel Prize for Physics, Erwin Schrödinger, said, I don't have the quote right in front of me, but the universe thus reveals the basic oneness of the universe,
Exactly.
So, it's been around forever. It's just been a concept that's been marginalized, and so we've lived in this illusion of separation. But, one of the key themes of this call and the summit is that it's time now, to awaken, and more than awaken. Awaken can just be an intellectual construct. Ken Wilber lays out the aspects of awakening and growing in our full development to the divine. The real fun part is really coming alive, in the fullness of the divine, living that way. And, of course, we're touching on a lot of those themes here. Let me bring in, here's another comment from a listener that's coming in. She says, I think that we have made a contract with ourselves and our children to come into this time of transformation into the real self with a capital S. And, of course, self is where we are re-identified with the earth or universe that we're a part of. It says, so what a great time to be in this world and to know that our children will take this work even further. Yeah, that's a beautiful idea, Monica. Thank you for bringing that in. Steve, is this sparking some things that you want to, or you want to expand on?
Well, yeah, and I think that what's happening right now is I love there's a famous quote from Alan Watson. Bruce and I quote it in Spontaneous Evolution, and I'm not doing justice to the quote, but essentially it says that spiritual maturity is instead of worshiping the finger, it's noticing where the finger is pointing, and all as you pointed out, every religion, spiritual path, ethical system is pointing to our connection. And because we have been in a state, again, this is part of our human evolution. I would suggest that nothing about us is wrong or has been wrong. It's simply been part of the learning curve. And now we are at the point where in order to survive as a species, we actually have to learn how to thrive together. And so it's really forcing us to upgrade to Humanity 3.0 to begin to listen to what these spiritual teachers have been telling us. Ancient wisdom and modern science are both pointing in the direction of this connectedness that we have, and the various ways that we've used to maintain separateness. The things that we've learned that when push comes to shove, whoever does more pushing and shoving is going to win. All of these things, they are now up for examination, and at some point, a critical mass of the heretofore uncritical masses will awaken to this realization, and all of a sudden we're living in a new reality. It's already happening. And it's not being reported in the news because the news is dedicated to the caterpillar. It's not about the butterfly. Harmony doesn't make news. It's not like millions of people went to work today and returned home safely. Details at 11. You can't really do that. So we've been distracted by negativity. And I think it's because we need to heal it. All of these awful truths that have been under wraps for years are now coming up. These are apocalyptic times. And apocalypse means lifting of the veils. So the veils are being lifted simultaneously on the various perpetrations of human against human. At the same time, the veils are being lifted on the spiritual practices that have been kept in protective custody for millennia. We now have the Kabbalah, we have shamanism, we have ancient Vedic practices, we have Native American spirituality. Hopi elders said, hey, we kept this stuff secret, use it, we need it. So the tools that we're going to need to actually make this oneness ground what we call the ideal with the real deal, these tools are being made available to us right now. And, what Patricia Cota-Robles has been doing and Bill Urey, all of these involve lifting the veils on ways of connecting up with the divine that we've been maybe perhaps we haven't been mature enough for, and now we are coming to this maturity, and lo and behold, they're made available, ready to use, and we get to lift them.
That is a fact, and I love, Steve, that I mentioned when I introduced you that you were co-creating programs together. You brought the Fukushima reactor challenge to us at the end of last year, and we, together with Celeste, created this program, first healing our waters, and then after that, healing our air, and we've got another program planned for June, healing our earth, and where we're really doing exactly this. We see our oneness with the sacred, our earth home, and have created these Ho'oponopono chants and this discussion and this community with people all over the world to heal the air, the water, the earth, these elements. I love it. Spirituality's always been two things. It's been one, this aspect of going within and connecting with the divine and feeling that loving energy and just having it wash over us and transform us. But then the second part is the activism as we're transformed and as we have this new self with a capital S, which is the earth around us, then we can't help but be involved in causes like Heal Our Water, where there's this aspect of the Fukushima reactor and and other pollutions as well in the water. Now with fracking, of course, there's the aspect of groundwater that is polluted, healing our air, healing our earth. Do you want to talk a little bit about this, Steve, just how we naturally come together to do this healing work for the sacred, which is, our the body, this collective body that we're part of?
Well, in doing my research for spontaneous evolution, we have a chapter called The One Suggestion, which talks about how science is affirming the invisible connection between things. And there's a number of studies that we cite. There's the work that Larry Dossey has done with remote healing through prayer. There's been some very interesting work that we cite in spontaneous evolution. There's also been the experiment that transcendental meditation people did in the 1990s. And by bringing a threshold number of meditators to, in this case it was Washington, D.C., they were able to show statistically that crime and other markers of dysfunction, even emergency room visits, went down during the period that the meditators were present. Heart Math Institute has done some really very, very helpful work with heart rate, heart coherence resonance. They have the Global Coherence Project that they're working with. There's fascinating work that Dean Radin in his Entangled Minds talks about that indicates that large numbers of people thinking about the same thing as what happened with the funeral of Princess Diana, the O.J. Simpson trial, the 9/11 attacks, actually create coherence in these random number generators, showing a pattern of coherence for no reason other than many people are concentrating. So when I saw what was happening with Fukushima, the reaction of fear, confusion, despair, there's nothing we can do, I called my friend Celeste Giacoboni, who has a new book out called How Do We Pray? And I know that Celeste has been working with Ho'oponopono, Hawaiian chant of forgiveness and reconciliation. And so with the three of us, you and me and Celeste, really hatched this first healing of the waters using the Fukushima idea that people were very concerned about this radiation to send out waves of healing. And, it's interesting. I've been talking with a number of experts on radiation. And these are people who are not people who are likely to cover up information. And it turns out that a lot of the radiation readings that people have been getting have nothing to do with Fukushima, that what they're reading are things that were not released by Fukushima that may be more closely related to local nuclear plants instead. But the point behind all of this meditation is to get our collective intention focused. If we really are one, if we really are an organism, what would it be like to think like an organism? What would it be like for us to have a mission statement as an organism, a purpose? And I'm not joking about it. A business has a mission statement. What would it be like if we said, the function of humanity is to bring together people in love so that everybody thrives? I love the Bucky Fuller's World game, to create a world that works for everyone without negatively impacting the ecosystem, and doing this in spontaneous creativity. So we now have the nervous system of humanity is in place. We have instant communications. We have the internet, and we have the various iterations of instant communication and technology. And now it's a matter of in recognizing our huge global footprint and impact we have as a species, to now begin to cohere together a global mind and, more importantly, a global heart, so that collectively we're operating from a healing plan rather than a chaotic me versus you situation. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely we are. I love it. We've got a question from a listener here, Steve, that points us in a terrific direction. It's kind of where I wanted to end up. Well, by the way, we've got 10 more minutes because we've got to allow about 5 minutes on the wrap-up. There is a hard stop with all the recordings at the half hour. The question from the listener is pointing us in the direction toward living in oneness with our children. So I'm going to read you this question, but then after that, Steve, if we have time, just to ask you about your own processes for living in oneness, and I know you've got an extraordinary relationship with your wife, so bringing in the, living in oneness with our significant other, I want to get to that if we have time. But here's the question from Alyssa in Jefferson City. She says, can you talk about humor and teaching oneness to our children? Since children know immediately when we are trying to teach, it seems that if we teach, we are part of the divine through humor, it would stick better. It's been said before that God must have a sense of humor. Can you give examples?
Well, I think that's an excellent point. What humor does is it allows us to hold what seem to be opposing ideas simultaneously because, the formula for a joke is 1, 2, 3. Number 1 sets up the premise. Number 2 reinforces the premise. And number 3 upsets the premise. So a minister, a priest, and a rabbi. Why is it 1, 2, 3? Well, I'll tell you a story. A minister, a priest, and a rabbi are discussing legacy, how they want to be remembered, what they want people to be saying when they're laying in their casket. And the minister sings, he says, I want people to say he was a family man and a pillar of his community. The priest said, I want people to say he was a holy man and a leader of his flock. And the rabbi says, I want people to say, look, I think he's breathing. So in this 1, 2, 3 jokingness, what we're also doing is we're including everything and not excluding anything and teaching people relationships and surprising relationships. And that's why humor is so connected with creativity, because it opens the door to looking at things that don't belong together and finding new ways for them to belong. So in teaching children a sense of humor, the sense of humor should be deconstruct obsolete beliefs, but leave people standing. In other words, humor that's not directed at diminishing anybody or hurting anybody, but in a certain sense used to bring people together. I want to share one story that to me typifies the power of humor. And as soon as a child is old enough to understand this, they will get the essence of how humor can be used to heal. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, there were American and Soviet delegates meeting to discuss possible trade between the two countries. When news of the missile crisis hit, everything stopped. Tremendous tension in the room. And finally, one of the Soviet delegates rather timidly raised his hand, and he said, I suggest we each go around and tell a joke. And his joke was, what's the difference between capitalism and communism? In capitalism, man exploits man. In communism, it's the other way around. And the whole room burst out laughing. And all of this separation, these isms, dissolved as the people in the room had that moment of recognition, this light shone in, that really we are all one beyond the isms. And in fact, the isms themselves are the problem, and who we are beyond the isms are the solution. So in choosing humor, it's important to recognize that helping children choose humor that is about concepts but does not put down people.
Yeah, and that's so true. Concepts but don't put down people, because that's what oneness is. Talks about the body, but the essence of oneness is love, and love doesn't put people down. We're always talking to ourselves in oneness, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're talking to ourselves, and of course that means we need to speak truthfully, but that we can speak compassionately, we can speak lovingly. But I love that you're bringing in the isms are the problem, and the solution is what is beyond is we are all one. It's what's beyond these isms. This just brings back around this whole aspect of awakening, and not only awakening, but really living it, coming fully alive in it, and being involved in healing our planet and all of the elements here on our planet. So beautiful. Steve, let's as well just bring in what, if I don't want to put you on the spot, but your own processes for communing with the divine. Are there a few things you could share? We've got about 5 minutes before we go into the wrap-up, and I also want to ask you about your just the oneness that you've created with your wife, Trudy. I know you have an extraordinary relationship.
Well, let me start with that. We just had our 28th anniversary, wedding anniversary, and at our wedding, we actually invoked this oneness. There was an understanding that, for us anyway, in the process of, neither of us had been married before. This was our first marriage. And we realized that part of the sacred aspect of marriage is that third entity that gets created, the we. And we've been very, very fortunate in that we've never tried to manipulate or leverage one another to be any different than we are. So this third entity, this we, when there is a conflict, when there is a disagreement, when there's something where we're below the line or puzzled or baffled, one of us will remember to allow that we to come up, so that we're looking at things from the perspective of oneness rather than the perspective of our limited view individual ego. And we've used humor, and I'm a dog in Chinese astrology, and of course in dyslexic Chinese astrology, I'm a god. But anyway, so Trudy knows I love dogs and I'm a dog. And when I get grumpy and growly, she'd just go, woof, 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 woof. And she'd go, sit, stay, roll over, and that would be a way to, as a playful reminder that I'm a dog and there is a master with a big capital M out there. So we've used humor a lot. And I think for myself, the one thing that, the one practice that puts me in the space that's both pre-rational and post-rational is being by myself in nature. Big trees, big sky, big water, all of these things, for me, that's my area of worship. I'm not a regular attender of services. I do often do talks Sunday morning, sometimes Saturdays, at various religious places and so on. But for me, it's that connection with nature that, plugs in it switches me on. Oh yeah, that's right. This is the real reality. And then everything else becomes a subset of that and less important than that connection.
Yes, absolutely. Nature. I'm lucky. We've got a couple of years ago, my wife said, we really ought to get a dog for the kids. My kids are now 9 and 12, and I said, well, geez, I love dogs. I grew up with dogs myself, and I said, geez, Stephanie, my wife, gosh, do you think we have the time to handle this, and so on and so forth. We ended up saying, yes, let's get the dog. And the idea was the kids were going to take care of the dog, and Stephanie too. And guess who's become the dog's best friend? Me.
Yes.
And one of the wonderful things about the dog, I bring in the dog after you talk about nature, because I get her out at least a couple times a day, and I walk her around on these different routes, or I'll bike her to really give her, good exercise sometimes. And just being out there, with nature and just feeling that light and the universe, and at night the stars, the energy of that just bathing me, and watching this dog smile. And of course animals are enlightened, as you talk about nature. Of course it's the outdoors, the trees and plants and sky, etc., but also animal life that is directly connected, and they're smiling and just in such a great place. So Yeah, nature can be better than any Sunday service for sure. I also wanted to say, because you brought in your relationship with Trudy, your wife, who you have a really beautiful relationship with, some wonderful thoughts there as well. Don't try and change the person, and that has come up, many times when we talk about oneness and our significant other. Just appreciate them for who they are. And oneness is love, and just the simple expression of love, and honoring them just as they are. So beautiful. And your humor, Steve, the astrology, I'm a dog, but, when you're dyslexic, you see God. Just, oh, my God. Terrific. Linda Small in Irvington, Virginia says, I love this, and thanks so much. So thank you, Linda. Small's been tuned into the program here throughout. And one of the many listeners that have shared, it's been a 5-star program all around. So, Linda, thank you for taking the time to share with us. We unfortunately are near the end of the hour here, so we want to go into the wrap-up. Steve, what web address can people go to learn more about you and your programs?
Well, first they can go to wakeuplaughing.com. That's the Swami's headquarters, and I think his hindquarters is there as well. And then you can Google Notes on the Trail. That's my blog, which comes out every week or two, every couple of weeks. And then Evolutionary Upwising, UPWISING. If you Google that, you'll find us. We're in pre-launch state, so the website is partly constructed. But the idea behind that is that we are collectively waking up and wising up to this oneness, and by doing it in the context of laughter, play, love, inclusion, we will magnetize more and more people until we actually do have, we're strong enough to become the news, so they have to report us. They have to report on the oneness, because we are the news.
Perfect. So check those out. WakeUpLaughing.com was the first site, and there were other things that Steve suggested as well. I hope you'll check out. I want to thank again all of the listeners who have been part of this Living in Oneness Summit. Over 15,000 people registered. As a reminder, there is a 48-hour free replay on programs that you didn't get to participate in live. And also during the summit, we're offering this $100 discount for all of the summit upgrade packages, so you can come back again and again to the wisdom that, such as what Steve just shared, and also of these other leaders here this year and last year. This program has been so incredible. Just this hour with Steve, that he's the wisdom that he shared and his incredible humor. It is powerful. It always gives me something to think about. And just when I think we've kind of captured all the wisdom, we go into the next day, and such as tomorrow with Patricia Cota-Robles and Bruce Lipton, and see that there's still so much to come. So thank you again to the listeners, and I hope you enjoy the free upgrades or the free replays, and then the upgrades that are available at a discount during the summit. Steve, I want to thank you so much. You've been fabulous. You always are, and we look forward to collaborating with you on these many other programs this year, including Healing the Earth in June. I want to thank my colleagues, Dee Meyer and Nanette Kennedy, who are here and that are leading this program in the background, and also co-hosting and helping to send out the communications each day. And last and certainly not least, I want to thank each of the listeners who were part of the Living in Oneness Summit. Again, the over 15,000 people who have registered this year. Next up, tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, and of course that's 9:30 Mountain Time, Patricia Cota-Robles. And then at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 11 Mountain Time, Bruce Lipton. So don't miss those programs. They're going to be incredible. And that's tomorrow, Thursday. Friday is incredible. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday's the grand finale. So stick with us. There's much more coming as